know, this tree's going to last a whole lot longer now that Ed Dickey and his crew put this concrete in. We're going to talk a little bit about that on the program today. But first, let's catch up with Ed and let him tell you a little bit about what he does to save your trees.
You know, great strides have been made in the chemical community as the technology come available now where you don't need to cumbersome capsules to tree, and we can put actually 9 or 10 different products at one time in a tree. You can see it boiling out from around the base of that as I'm injecting this into the soil ball. Amino acids, different miticides, insecticides. We can choose what we want to treat for, and we get a long residual from this. So you get a year's worth of good or longer out of our injection when we do a tree. An actual mold of chemicals put around your tree, and it's all moisture activated. So as the weather hits it or the rain, it supercharges it again and carries through the tree. So to get rid of your unwanted insects or to revive a tree to put new life in it, you know, that's what we do. We put the zap back in the sap. We give new life to old trees. That's what we do. We're the tree doctors. Dickey Tree Service in your yellow pages under trees.
It's time to go out in the field and catch up with Ed Dickey and see what he's doing to save trees throughout the Mid-South.
I want to talk a little bit about composting. You can put your leaves in here, a lot of your yard waste, your grass clippings, you know, some of your uneaten yard plants. Put table scraps in there. You know, wet it down ever so often. Great way to compost and reuse our natural resources. Also, a lot of people, just people here have put some pallets up, just normal pallets that you receive stuff on, and put some fence posts, some T-posts around it. They come in here with their lawnmower and they dump their yard clippings in here. As it decomposes over time, it's very rich organic soil that they use around their other plants in their yard. It's not an expensive operation to do this, and it's a safe, efficient way to get rid of your yard clippings and make double use of them. So keep that in mind. If you got the room and place out of the way to do it, by all means try it. You'll be glad you did, and I know your trees will be glad you did. I'm here right outside of Wynn with Diana Jones, and she got a unique story about a tree. She had me treat some trees in here, and we're going to go into detail on a lot of those. But tell us what happened with this little tree here and how old it is, Miss Jones.
When my children were small, my mother and father used to take them on trips with them. They had a 40-foot motor coach, and they would travel to all the different locations of our factories around the country. And on one of the trips, they stopped at the Penn Plantation in North Carolina, and they had a whole bunch of these trees up and down the driveway, and my kids picked up acorns and brought them home unbeknownst to me. I found them probably a month or so later in the bottom of their closet, and it was just a big old pile of them. So I told them, you can't keep them all. Just pick out the one acorn you want and we'll plant it. I didn't think it would grow. And we finally got this little sprout in a little glass, and that sprout grew and grew. We kept it in the house for about a year. Then I transplanted it into a flower pot and kept it for about another year. And finally we put it out here in the yard, and never dreaming that it was really going to survive, but we would stand over top of it to keep it from being mowed when the yard got mowed, and this is the result. So this tree belongs to my children. It's called a chinkapin oak.
Yeah, chinkapin. And how old is it when y'all put this out now?
Oh, it's probably about 20, maybe 23, anywhere from 23 to 25 years old.
Well, from little acorns, you know, big oaks do grow, don't they? You mentioned about the factories. What factories did your father used to have?
Halstead Industries, it was copper tubing mills, and Halstead Metal Products, which was rubber. They produced rubber, Insultube.
I always like to ask people what they do, and I want to ask you, what business are you and your husband in?
We farm. We're different farmers from most everybody. We raise hybrid Bermuda grass hay, cut it, and sell it for hay, and we also sell sprigs.
Yes, ma'am. And a hybrid Bermuda, isn't it?
Right, hybrid Bermuda grass. We have 3 kinds, World Feeder, Wonder Grass, and Vaughn's number 1.
And horses really like that, I hear. Show horses. Yep.
Very much so. In fact, we, at one time, were feeding all of the hay that went to the world champion Tennessee Walker.
I'll be doggone. We're going to move around on your back deck, and we'll just talk a little more. I'm at the rear of Diana Jones's house, and Diana, how long is this a gorgeous deck you got around this oak tree? How old is this oak tree?
That oak tree is about 28 years old.
So it's a little older than that acre that your kids put out.
Mm-hmm.
And I like the way that they have protected it. They've got a growing area around the deck, and people need to keep that in mind when they put one in the middle like this, to leave a few years of growth. And y'all anticipated that, didn't you?
Well, actually, that tree has probably taken up about a foot of that growth since we built the deck, and I'm afraid we're going to have to rebuild the deck. It's getting smaller every year.
Right, and that just means cutting out and giving a tree a little bit more room if your deck's still in good shape, and increasing the size of the protector. But I had to treat this tree, and it was very difficult because my needle wasn't getting down in there, and I had to take some parts off of it to actually treat the tree because I couldn't get under the deck. But she had me treat all the trees here in the yard. And the name of this property, I'm fixing to go in that in a minute. I'd like to ask her mother to come into the picture if she would, and just kind of stand here with us. And the name of this property is called what now?
Tanglewood.
Tanglewood. And how did you come up? Your mother come up with that? How did you come up with it?
Well, when we bought the farm, there was 5,500 peach trees on here, on the grounds, and we took a walk down through the woods and found out that we couldn't get through because there were so many vines hanging down. It looked like Tarzan was going to come through any time, and everything was a mess down there. And I just made the comment that it's a tangled up mess, and then we decided to call it Tanglewood.
Yes, ma'am. Your daughter elaborated on that a little bit. She drove the bulldozer on clearance part of this, didn't you?
We both used a bulldozer. We took turns.
Bulldozer and tractor.
Yeah. And pulled the trees out.
Pushed the trees out with the bulldozer and pulled them away with the tractor. So we cleared the farm ourselves.
And how many years ago was that?
40.
40 plus, about 45 now.
Well, I don't run into too many lady bulldozer drivers. I'll have to pat you on the back for that.
I have used all kinds of heavy equipment.
Yes, ma'am.
And these kids were raised using
Yeah.
equipment.
My father always told me you can do anything you want to do, so he never limited me to what I could do. Maybe I just wasn't smart enough to know I shouldn't be.
I tell you, it's a good attitude to have.
She had her own tractor, and so did her brother had his own tractor. It was theirs, and when they were, in seventh grade.
6th or 7th grade,
Yeah.
I got my own tractor and paid it off in a couple of years' time. My brother and I baled hay and bush hogged for people.
Cleared ground and everything for people.
That is great.
When we were little tiny kids.
This was up in Pennsylvania.
Yes, ma'am. How many acres is it in the compound here?
Actually, we have several farms in this location. It's not just the home place, and altogether we have about 1,000 acres here.
Yes, ma'am. Well, the approach, when we'll show that on the camera here shortly of the Tanglewood approach in it, all of y'all live in kind of the compound on the one area of the farm.
Yes, my mother lives down the driveway. My daughter's across the driveway, and we're here. I have one daughter that doesn't live on the farm. She's in Springfield, Missouri.
Yes, ma'am. We're going to go up to your mother's house here shortly, and I'm going to talk about her trees. And y'all had an interesting story your daughter told me, and I hadn't quizzed you on this, about lightning hitting years ago.
The house in Pennsylvania.
Oh, yes. Yeah, we had just filled up our fuel tank, our diesel tank, and it was right outside the kitchen window, and there's a breather pipe.
Yes, ma'am.
Well, there was a storm coming in, and the storm hit, the lightning ignited the fumes coming out of that tank, blew the end of the tank out right through the wall of the house, clear through the basement, and tore up my kitchen floor.
You and your daughter was in there too at the time, wasn't you?
Well, they were in the
Us
other.
and the cats.
Yeah, I was in the kitchen at the sink when it hit, and it threw me up in the air, and I sailed through the doorway, and I just bumped my elbow, but that's all that I got hurt. And my cat took off. We hunted all over the house after it was all over. We hunted all over the house for the cat. We found him
Hiding in the closet.
in a closet in her bedroom.
It just destroyed the kitchen floor and the basement
yes.
and everything, didn't it?
It came took two corners like out, came down the middle, stripped down here, and then split out again.
Busted the floor and all.
Yeah.
The reason I brought that
Now,
up,
that floor was reinforced with steel,
I-beams.
with that corrugated steel, with concrete over top of it, but it buckled it right up in the air.
buckled it up. Reason I brought that up, every home up here on the complex has lightning arresters, and you don't see that much down south. And most people, we tell them us southern people are so smart we don't put them on, but up north every home has them, don't they?
Just about every home, yeah.
I tell people from Cape Girardeau, Missouri on, every two-story structure has a lightning arrestor on it, and we even put them in trees sometime down here too, you know, but up there they do it all the time also. Here we have a oak tree that got a weak crotch in it, and it's already got a break down through here, and the tree has tried to respond over the years by putting on the extra cambium here, but it's still cracking. They called us in, and we put a 1-inch bracing rod through it. Other end's coming out over here, drilled all the way through the tree. These hold 50,000 pounds, so it'll eventually grow over this, and that will let them have this nice tree for ages to come. Because needless to say, if that was to bust off, it would just splinter all the way down. It just ruined this tree. So that simple procedure saves that tree. Keep an eye on the trees in your yard. You might have one like it. We can help you. We're here in Cherry Valley, and here with me is Mike Woods, and the mayor here at Cherry Valley. How long you been mayor, Mike?
Since 1991.
1991. What we're standing in front of, folks, is one of the biggest white oak trees I've ever worked on. And how long have you lived here around this tree, Mike?
We moved here in 1977, and it's kind of the centerpiece of our yard here. You know, everything my wife does pretty well centers around that on this side of the house over here.
Right, and she does a great job of the landscape around it too, so you can enjoy it. I hope some of the pictures will come out that we'll be showing. It shows the hollow in this tree, but you want to tell our viewers kind of what was going on when you called me in?
When we first moved here, the center of the tree was hollowed out, and you could actually, I think, well, I know I stood up inside of it. I don't know if you did or not before you fixed it, but it was hollowed out enough that you, like I said, you could stand inside of it.
Right, yeah, I think John, if he can look in the archives, he can find where I stood in that tree. It was a big old holler, and yeah, it looks a little different now, doesn't it, Mike?
Oh, yeah, it looks a whole lot better. We were really determined to save the tree, you know, whatever it took to fix it, to preserve it, and we were committed to doing that.
Right, when I came to do this and brought the helper, and in fact Mike's son had to get involved, and Mike did with a backhoe to lift us. We actually, there's a hole up higher in the tree that we had to cut to put concrete in to fill this up. Isn't that right, Mike?
Right, it took I don't know how many yards was it.
I believe it was 5, wasn't it?
Yeah, five or yards or more, and it was a job getting it in there for you and Derek and your helper, but y'all got it in there.
Right, and inside this, which you can't see, we put a lot of rebar down in the ground to give the tree extra holding power that the concrete holds in there. And because of that, I recommended to Mike that we put a lightning arrestor, and you agreed to do that, didn't you?
Yeah. Like I said, we're going to do everything we can to preserve the tree.
And the camera can show here, this is the lightning arrestor coming down on the back side of the tree, and you got to look for it to know that it's there. But we're going to move around the other side of the tree, and we're going to show a limb that caused Mike concern and got this whole project started. Mike, why don't you tell the viewers kind of what we're looking at right here?
All right, this is where a limb fell off the tree. Gosh, it's been what, about a month or two ago?
About 2 months.
And luckily it fell and missed the house. But at that point, we decided that this would be the time to, do whatever we needed to do to the tree. So I called you, and you came over and trimmed it back, and we filled it up with concrete as far up as we could here with the concrete truck. And then we lifted it up above with the backhoe and filled it up from the top. We filled it up probably a good, 20 foot?
Yeah, I would estimate about 20 foot. We also, I mentioned in an earlier program that don't stop a water drain in any tree. And we put a 2-inch pipe up there right above the filling, so if there was ever water caught, it would run out and drip out. Isn't that right, Mike?
That's right.
So we tried to do everything correctly, and this is, even though it looks like this is wood, this is actually concrete all in here. There was a form built and straps around this tree and to hold it in place till it dried. It's a pretty big operation. Don't do that much and don't want to do that much, so don't be calling about doing that much, because that was pretty hard.
That was a job.
But I appreciate Mike taking a minute and talking about the tree here, and there's a lady across the street that made a statement about this tree. What'd she say, Mike?
Well, she's lived here all her life, and she's in her late 80s now, and she said she remembered when she was a little girl this tree being over here and just about this size, so there's no telling how old it is.
Right, it's one of the largest ones I've ever come in contact in, and I'm not sure it's not a record tree, and I'll measure it, and we'll check on that too before I'm all through. But up at the top, the left-hand corner, this tree is already starting to close over where all this work was done. It's just been a few weeks. But Mike had me treat the tree also to help it recover. And so we're liable to check back on this tree a year or so and see what's going on and talk to you again, Mike.
All right, well, we sure appreciate it. You did a good job.
Thank you, sir. Miss Woods, what do you think of the work we done here on this oak? Do you like the way it looks?
I am. I'm real pleased with it. Looks good.
Yes, ma'am. And Mike, we just spoke with your husband earlier, and it probably makes you feel a little bit more secure with this tree, doesn't it?
It does. Knowing it's not hollow anymore.
Yes, ma'am. And it was such a big area on the inside, and it took a lot of concrete. If your son hadn't helped, we would have had trouble doing it in that one day that it took, So I appreciate his help. I wish he could have been here so we could talk to him.
Right, I do too. We're all proud of it.
Right. Well, he's working on the farm, but one day we'll stop back by here after Miss Woods is going to use a camouflage paint and kind of get it all the same color. And this is one of the historic trees here in Cherry Valley, so we're going to visit back here and see her artisticness on her painting at some later segment, and we'll check with you then about the tree.
Okay, will do.
I'm here right outside of Cherry Valley with Miss Clements, and Miss Clements, tell me what was going on when a tornado hit here. How long ago has that been?
A year ago, last May, I believe, or 2 years. It was May the 31st, 2 years ago.
Yes, ma'am, and you had called me in about that time, and I treated some of these oak trees that had problems, but won't you tell our viewers what happened to some of your machinery and the house and a lot of stuff around here?
9 grain bins were blown away, and a lot of the trees were blown down, and had to put a new roof on, had a lot of shingle damage, and siding on the house had to be replaced, and just a number of things. It was several buildings blown over.
Yes, ma'am. Them tornadoes can be destructive even to our trees also. And you can kind of see in the background behind us here, these trees are doing fairly well after being treated. And you took down a whole lot of pine trees, didn't you, Miss Clements?
Oh, yes. I don't like pine trees at all. They're too soft. They break often. No, I don't care for the pine trees at all.
Well, you realize they're our state tree, so.
Yes. Well, I did leave 2 or 3.
Well, that a girl. Okay, we got to have a couple of those. And this is the wood farm is what we own, aren't we?
That's right. Yes, belonged to my husband and I, my first husband. My son farms, Mike Wood farms it.
Yes, ma'am. We'd talked with him earlier about that big tree in town we'd worked on. And how long have you had these trees out here in the farm headquarters here?
Oh, we bought it in 53, I believe, 1953.
So for over 50, you planted some of these trees, didn't you?
Yes, several of them I planted. I planted the oak trees and a lot of pine trees, which I did cut down, and they were damaged anyway. But we bought it in 53.
Yes, ma'am. Well, after you had me treat the trees, it's been, well, close to over 2 years. What do you think of them? You think it did some good?
Yes, we did, because we had a lot of borers, and my daughter has sprayed around them and fertilized them, and so they're beginning to come out of it a little bit.
Yes, ma'am. Just that tornado was enough of a thing, much less the borers, wasn't it?
Yes, it was. I really didn't know about the borers until you come and told me.
Yes, ma'am.
So.
And it was very evident. You can see once I pointed out the staining in the hole, they were so bad we could actually put our fingers in some of the holes.
Oh yes, In fact, there was some borers in there.
Yeah, that's right. Well, I thank you, Miss Clements, for taking a minute and talking about your trees, and I hope they keep looking up.
Well, thank you. I do too, and I think they will.
It's kind of easy to see when they poured this guttering down through the side of this drive. This tree was a young tree. Well, years have passed and the trees have grown, and this tree here is pushed up this concrete, and it's broken away from where it's hooked. There's 2 or 3 ways to handle that. Of course, you could remove the whole piece and re-pour you something and have a same problem in the future. Or you could easily just take about a 4-pound, 5-pound hammer, tap this away to break up that concrete, to give that tree, to let this sit back down with the other one, and give that tree a little bit of room to grow, and still have your gutter in place. I'm more in agreement with doing it the second way than I was the first way, because you destroy so much by just taking that out. And if you chip that away carefully, you can still make use of your concrete and not hurt your tree too. So give a little bit of thought before you jump in and do something, because it took a while for this tree to lift this up, just like some sidewalks. It lifts the sidewalks right up. So a lot of times you can correct them without a lot of effort and still maintain a reaction that you're happy with. You'll be glad you did. We're on another residence here at Tanglewood, and here with me is Miss Halstead. And you had me treat all these trees, and what'd you find going on to have me come in, Miss Halstead?
Well, I knew you were up there doing my daughters, and I thought wouldn't hurt to have these done too.
Yes, ma'am. And what we did, we found, like this oak behind me, it's got a weak growing place there in the crotch of it where it'll actually grow itself apart over time. And she's going to have me put a reinforcement rod, which people have seen me do on the show quite a bit, to give that several more years, because it's a main approach tree to the house, and you think it's a very important tree too, don't you?
Yeah, that's one of the original trees that was here when we bought the farm.
Yes, ma'am. And your daughter's husband, we didn't mention his name before. What is his name?
David.
And he's a big help on the hay operation and everything. So
he and Diane are the hay operation.
Yes, ma'am. Yeah, I figured that from before. They're very hardworking people.
Yes.
Well, we're going to move around here. You've got some very unique and old trees here. And when I see Diane coming up there, we'll get her to join us, and we'll get her in the picture and talk about your trees.
Okay.
Diane, your mother tells me that you designed that Tanglewood sign on the approach to this property. Tell me about that.
Well, that was, I guess, one of the first things that I did when we moved down here and decided to build the house out here and everything. Was it just seemed like it was the right thing to do, to have an entranceway that was pretty, and I just sat down and drew it out on paper, and that's what it ended up looking like.
It looks fine to me.
It has been torn down once. Some people thought that we were the state park, and they were having a big to-do out there, a farm show at the state park, and a truck carrying a load of tractors came out to go to the park and turned in our entranceway and ripped it down once. So it's had to be replaced, and it was raised up 2 more feet.
Okay, that's a neat story. Miss Halstead, you and your daughter, Miss Jones, when y'all cleared this with your dozer and stuff, what made you leave what y'all left here? You go first, Miss Halstead.
Well, the trees were such a good marker for the two separate pieces of land that we bought, that we just left these trees in. This whole road all the way down here was the divider. And, well, I don't know. We just like the trees, too.
Oh, yes, ma'am. And then Miss Jones, can you elaborate on that a little bit, how y'all managed to save? Because I noticed y'all was very careful not to hurt the trees, wasn't you?
Well, I can tell you exactly how they got saved. They were too big to push over.
Yeah.
That was one of the things. We were just more interested in getting rid of the old peach trees because they were all dying, and this was where their house was going to be situated, so we needed just a clearing for the peach, for the house, and so we just left all the oak trees that we could.
Yes, ma'am. At that time that was going on, Miss Halstead, your husband was busy with the factories and stuff, and he passed away when?
93.
93.
Yes, ma'am. And how many factories y'all have all together at one time?
We had 9 at one time.
Yes, ma'am. I'd heard of that name for years, and I'd seen some of his handiwork where he had put for the heated pool that you had used solar energy back years ago before they even had solar energy.
Right. We made them in our Alabama factory.
And that's way ahead of its time, wasn't it? And you heated your pool with that solar energy.
Yeah. It worked out real well.
Yes, ma'am. A quite talented man. Okay, well, I thank y'all both for taking the time to talk about your trees. And like I said, I treated all these folks' trees, and we'll come back here in the future and maybe see how good my stuff works.
Thank you very much. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Let's catch up with Ed and let him tell you a little bit about what he does to help save your trees right now on Tree Doctors.
Some trees have insect problems. Some just have construction damage. Well, we can handle them both generally at the same time. I'm using a soil injection here, building a mold of chemicals all around the root ball. It gets translocated into the crown of the tree. It has a very long residual. Stays working for a year or better, killing insects as well as growing new feeder roots and increasing the canopy of the tree. 9 different chemicals is going in this at once. So there's so much we can do that we used to couldn't do, and in most cases it's cheaper than it used to be. And just name me just any one thing that's come down in price. Well, taking care of your trees have come down in price. Give us a call. You'll be surprised. We're the Tree Doctor, Dickey Tree Service, in your yellow pages under trees.
Well, folks, that's all the time we have right now for Tree Doctors. We thank you so much for joining us. And remember, we're here every Saturday and Sunday at 6 o'clock right here on KAIT. If you got any questions for Ed, you can go to dickeytree.com or call the number below. We'll see you next time on Tree Doctors.